Welcome back to a brand new episode of The Crew Review.
For you. For you.
Oh.
It's for Beth.
For you,
Thanks,
This
Beth.
episode
guys.
goes out to Beth.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us, Beth.
Thanks for being
Even
here.
though
We
you're
love you.
also a host. Our
I
guest
do what I
host
can.
today.
And every day.
And every day. Except
Beth.
for last episode, we missed you. It wasn't the same.
I missed you guys.
But
It's been a long time since
welcome
I've done a
back.
crew review.
So we are back in the studio,
Woohoo!
Obvi, and we are stoked because also the theaters have reopened. Thank goodness. That was the whole reason we started this podcast, was to review movies in theaters. And so now we can get back to what we were
They
doing.
shut down,
How many
like-
did we have? Like 3 before? 2 or 3?
Yeah, like 4.
Or I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
We did Call of the Wild.
Dr. Doolittle.
Yeah, we
Dr.
did do
Dolittle.
Dolittle.
Frozen 2.
No, that wasn't a theater
that
release.
No, that's right.
Maybe we had 2.
No, there was one more in there. What was it?
We did blah, 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 blah. We
That's
did Doolittle, Call of the Wild, and that was it. That was it for theaters. Then we
Oh.
went straight into Frozen 2, Knives Out, onward. So this is our third movie of doing the format how we intended for it to be. So
Wow.
We finally made it to 3,
if
guys.
you're still watching and hanging with us, thank you for getting through these 20 episodes with us.
It's been an interesting time. But
Yeah.
we're excited to be back with a good movie.
Yes.
A good theater movie.
Oh my goodness,
Yes.
guys! We went and saw Tenet, and it blew my mind. I'll say that for me. I don't know if y'all's minds, how your minds are, if they're okay. It took several days to recover, and I'm still not fully okay anymore.
It's
Like,
not something you can watch right before bed.
It's not. No.
Your
need
mind
them.
just goes. It's a good thing.
Oh my
through
goodness,
movie.
yeah.
You just
I
have to
don't
ponder
sleep
it.
anyway because of a newborn, but
Yeah.
that just added to it. I was thinking about Tenet every night. So
Do you explain to Carson like the theories that are in Tenet as he screams at night?
no, I usually just hold him and say, "Please go to sleep."
Maybe Tenet would put him to sleep.
Yeah, I'll talk to him about it
Talk
tonight.
to him about some entropy and
Yeah.
see what he thinks.
Entropy.
I could start him. We could watch Inception tonight and see if it helps him.
See if Inception helps him. You will have what a major breakthrough in child development. Inception for
Oh my
sleep
goodness.
sleep training. Wow.
I mean, a dream within a dream.
Patent
Oh
that.
my
Maybe
Patent
goodness.
that right now.
you're actually asleep right now, and we are in a dream within a dream.
Don't tell me this. So we went and saw Tenet, and going into it, nobody knew what the heck this movie was about. I mean, y'all saw the trailer. Everybody saw the trailer, and pretty much everybody I've talked to, they're like they had no idea what it
Yeah.
was.
So I
And-
actually did not see the trailer.
Oh, you didn't. So
I-
you just went in with
I
just a
wanted
name.
to go. There was twice it popped up on something, and I was like, nope, I want to go in blind. So I
I
went in.
love that.
And
you
it
did that.
did not disappoint. It did not. Like
I mean,
going in blind paid
it-
off.
There's two directors that I will see anything they make, and that's Christopher Nolan and James Cameron. If their name is on it, it is approved by me, and I will go see it. And I haven't been
Pre-approved by John.
disappointed yet. So, oh man, this movie. Yeah, shall we get into it?
Yeah.
We
Let's
shall.
hop into that spoiler zone.
We're hitting that spoiler zone. Spoilers. Here we go.
All right,
All right.
Beth, hit us with the what the heck this movie's about.
Okay, so if I really had time to summarize this movie well, it would take me 30 minutes.
Time.
I mean,
Time.
time.
This movie's about time. Go ahead.
Wow, what a spoiler.
That was it. That was a summary. We're done.
Oh, before we do, back to the trailer. I remember what I was going to say. I saw the trailer, and I'm glad that I didn't know what the heck the movie was about. It was very confusing, but after seeing the movie, it's like, thank goodness they didn't reveal anything. Because in the trailer, they leave it confusing on purpose. And I'm like, oh, I thought I just missed it.
I
Sorry.
feel like if it hadn't had a lot of hype around it, I may not have been tempted to watch it based off of the trailer.
Yeah.
But it was like, because it was just so vague. But again, I'm glad that it was vague. It was fun to jump into this and not know what I was really getting into.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting to think, about watching trailers, and usually they give you a pretty good, not understanding of the plot,
Yeah.
but you know what you're in for.
Yeah.
And I went back after the fact and watched the trailer and as well, and I don't think if I'd watched it ahead of time, like it gives almost nothing away
Right.
about what you're going into.
All you know is it's an action movie, and there's people with gas masks, and some things are like in reverse, and you're like, what the heck's happening? And then you're like, all right, I'm gonna go see it.
You got it.
Let's go.
So it's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy.
Summarize.
Okay, so Tenet is about, get this, the protagonist. Yes, that is really his name. He does not have an actual name. No one says his name the entire movie, and at 2 points in the movie, he refers to himself as protagonist. So there we go. He is given a top secret mission where he's told that the world is literally going to come to an end, and he has to save it. He's the only one who can, and they give him one word, Tenet. That's all he has to go on. He doesn't really know what's happening. We find out through this rather confusing journey that the protagonist goes on, little pieces of information here and there, that there is this technology that has been developed called inversion, where they have reversed the entropy of objects, and they now move backwards through time, which is pretty crazy. And the future is sending these objects back to the past. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what their plan is. And so he goes and sets off to find out what's happening. He has his ally named Neil, played by Robert Pattinson, who happens to be another spy, and he actually knows the world of the billionaires and can help him navigate around all of this. And then we have Kat, who is the wife of our villain. His name is Andrei Satar. This guy is an arms dealer. And then we find out later in the movie his pancreatic cancer is dying. And he decides if he's dying, no one else should live either. So he has agreed to help the people in the future destroy the world. So the way that they end up saving the world is actually really cool, and we'll talk about this more in depth in a few minutes. But they use an inversion pincher where half the team moves forward in time and then reports back to the other team, and they move backwards in time, where they get the 9-piece algorithm and stop the total destruction of the world. It's pretty cool. Then we find out that Neil and the protagonist actually have known each other for a very long time. What is up with that? And that the protagonist is actually going to go back further into the past and start the secret organization known as Tenet. Kind of a mind-blowing twist there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a lot of things that, like, it was hard to wrap my brain around. Oh, it was so packed, and the movie, and a lot of the movie, it would just have like a lot of subtleties, and the pace was really fast. So it's like if you missed it, you missed it.
Absolutely.
Kind of like
Yeah.
his movie Inception, the same way. Like if you got it in the first go, you must be like a genius with a 300 IQ or something. I don't know, but yeah. What's the highest IQ level? Do they have a cap? I don't even know.
It does have a cap, but I don't know what it is. What's the scale?
My
Clearly-
IQ is not high enough to know.
Clearly, we are not high enough on the scale
Yeah.
to be aware of the cap.
scale. Let's see. 115 is the high.
No, that's
That's
not right.
true, because mine's like a 199, I bet.
Most people are represented in the middle between 85 and 115 is what it says.
Okay. Because isn't like 1 like the average mind? Is that right?
I don't know.
And that's what they base it off on, of how average you compare to the average? I don't know.
I have no
So
idea.
Tenet.
Tenet.
Well, we'll let him continue to find out.
220 or 230.
Okay. So
You know.
only off by 70.
Only off by 70. Not
Something
bad.
in there.
So
Not bad at all.
Who
yeah.
knows?
But it's definitely a movie that you got to go back and watch again after you see it the first time. And we've only all seen it once. Also, we saw it in a regular theater. I think it'd be cool to see it again in IMAX.
Absolutely.
I'm not
Ooh.
rich, and I don't have all the time in the world, but if I did, I'd go see it in IMAX. And I will be owning this movie and watching it several times over when it comes out, so I can more understand it, as I did Inception. Watched it over and over and over. But throughout the first half of the movie, you don't really understand they're going to go back in time, or you don't really. All you know is things are in reverse.
Yes.
And it's just like,
And
okay,
they get larger and larger.
and things get larger and larger, and like bullets moving up to like vehicles that are flipping in reverse, people fighting in reverse. You're like, oh, this is so weird. Things are backwards. And then like at the middle of the movie, I don't know if it's like perfectly in the middle or how it is on the timeline, but then it gets to where they go inside a machine, and then they are in the past. And the reason why they have to wear a gas mask is because their lungs operate. They can't take in the air, which is not in the past, or something. Isn't it? It's like it had to reverse the way their lungs work, or something. So, which I would never even thought of. Like, it's just like I bet that when Christopher Nolan was writing this, he was like, "What would people come back and say? No, that couldn't work because here's a plot hole. Their lungs wouldn't work."
You know, I think it's interesting that they harp on lungs because I'm like, well, if that's true, then I feel like a lot of your systems wouldn't work the same way.
Your other organs.
Well, I wonder, like, even skin exposure.
Yes.
Ooh.
Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. But skin exposure, like, I don't know, because air has effects on your skin.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Is
touched
that
on
reversed?
at least like how fire feels like ice and ice feels like fire.
Right. But even just the, my goodness, I guess with your lungs, you like immediately need oxygen. Like if we were without oxygen to breathe,
Yeah.
you know. But when it comes to our skin, like it's just over time how the air affects it is a slow process. So I guess the reverse process isn't that big of a
So
deal.
if you're feeling old and you got some baggy skin, just go in that machine and just hang out there, and so your skin reverses.
Well, that happened with her injury. So
Yes.
Kat gets injured.
That's true. Yeah.
And they put her through the, what's that thing called again?
The pincer.
No, that was
Oh.
their strategic move. Was the pinch.
Oh, that was.
I don't know what the machine was called.
The
That puts you through the
TARDIS.
TARDIS. That's it. Put you through
Exactly.
inversion,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
you're going backwards. And so I mean, technically, and if we think about the protagonist eventually going back,
Yeah.
I mean, he has to be moving backward for
Also-
years to get back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like, do you carry? I think really the oxygen thing was just one piece that they picked on so that you would have a visual representation of like who's going in reverse and who's going forward.
Yeah, that could
That's
be too.
true.
Because they're going in.
They just give you one thing. Like they're like
Just one thing.
some people are gonna way overthink it.
like
and
me. That's
They're
okay.
just like, it's a movie. Move on.
I did want to know though, with the special air that they're breathing, like what did they do to this air? And then are they carrying supplies, or is it just a thing that's translating the air? Like, is it converting the air as they breathe it, so they don't actually carry a pack?
I think they still need oxygen,
Yeah.
but because everything's moving in reverse, like, or everything's not moving in reverse, it's so confusing
It
because
is.
everything's inverted.
Yes.
Breathing doesn't give you oxygen like it normally
Yeah.
does with the air. Like breathing in air doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So it's still oxygen because you still,
Yeah, it's
they're
still-
still people. Like they're still, like their bodies are still needing things.
Yeah, but it was like you had to have. They called it special air, and I was like,
Special
But they
air.
didn't really explain what was done to the
Yeah.
air.
Well,
It was a small piece, but I latched onto it, and I have questions. Christopher Nolan.
Let's sit down.
call us.
Let's talk.
If you're watching Christopher Nolan, give
We'd
us a
love-
call.
We'd love to have you in studio.
We have a
We
lot of
would.
questions.
We
We
would.
do.
I thought it was a great movie, like well thought out. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
if we went through every piece and kind of
Yeah.
tried to split, we're gonna find some errors, and it's just the way that because this. I mean, it's not a real thing, so they're gonna be errors. In case I've spoiled it for
Lies.
anybody, there is no machine that's
I'm actually
inverting
going in
everything.
reverse right now.
Oh, are you?
That explains so much.
But you know, I mean, as far as a concept goes, it's a great concept, and then they thought it out really well.
They
Oh
did.
my goodness.
I mean,
I can't
It's-
imagine how long it took
and-
to write that
mm-mm,
script.
mm-mm.
And all the way up to the point when they go into the machine, I still didn't realize what was happening. Like, until they came out on the other side. And I'm like, wait, why are there two of them yelling at each other across the window? And I was like,
Yeah.
what is happening? And then they asked, like, if I go in, will everything be okay? And he says, look, it's already happening or whatever. And then he goes in and does it. And I was like, what? And so then I was like, that's when it hit me when they showed that scene. I was like, oh. And then
It
we're all in the
clicks.
theater. Me and Beth are sitting next to each other in the theater. We're just like, oh my gosh.
Well, and I think for the audience, like that was how you're supposed to respond.
Yeah.
You get it a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
When you first introduced to it at the beginning of the movie, and the scientist shows him the bullet and how you can, these objects have gone back, they're inverted. If you're going to do something with them eventually, you'll do it. Now it looks like he just picks this out of thin air, this
Right.
bullet up, but then he drops it. You have no idea what's happening. I'm like, huh? Like then I'm like, huh. And then when he fires the gun, like you're just like, this is confusing.
Yeah.
And then as little things happen, it's like, okay. And then they introduce that fight sequence at the airport with
So
that person.
cool.
So he's fighting that guy, and he's inverted, and he's like, going backwards on the ground.
I have to say, like, that fight scene, we need to harp on that for a hot minute.
Let's sit on it.
whenever we're ready.
Let's sit down. We can do it. Well, to that point, it gives you like slow progression, and then you see literally mirror. You see it. You see the two things happening against each other with that special room that is that two-way glass that allows you to see. I mean, crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So it just and make you go but it's a visual of what's been happening this whole time, so you see how it clicks.
Yeah.
But still, so I'm with you. It's pretty crazy. You get there and you're like,
And there's a lot of things that, like, we'll come back to the fight scene, but just like how, like, going throughout the movie, stuff you didn't understand at first, and your mind's just kind of like, maybe I'll figure it out later. I don't know. It's just like you just kind of like stick it in the back of your mind, and then they come back to each one of those points, and it's like, this is why you didn't get it, and this is why you now get it. Like, you understand it was inverted at the time. Like the fight when you find out, we're in the spoiler zone. He's fighting himself, both inverted and regular. Holy cow! That is the coolest concept. And I was watching the behind the scenes. I think I already told you all about this, but like they had to learn how to fight backwards, and they did the scene twice. They filmed all of these things twice. They never did like, let's reverse the cameras. They filmed them doing it forward and then doing it backwards both times, and it blows my mind. But like how he was like doing the whole weird like thing on the floor. I was like, the first time we saw that part, I was like, okay, that was weird.
I was like, this looks like it's from The Exorcist, and I'm ready to bail.
that's it.
I was like, and again, we didn't really know what kind of movie we were walking into, and I'm like, if we fix it, if we're going Exorcist over here, I'm leaving.
And I loved it at the end of the first time you watched the fight, how him in the black suit like just disappears with such force out the door, and you're just like, what the heck just happened? But then you find out later it was an explosion that sent him in there, and you're like, oh, and then he's fine. And then like when he was, as soon as that happened, that was another moment where we all looked at each other and we were just like, oh my gosh.
That was crazy.
It was
just
so cool.
I mean, just seeing the different pieces of the movie playing in quote reverse, like from where you were, is pretty cool. I will say, when I first saw the fight scene, I guessed it was him.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did?
I
Okay.
was wrong on one point. I thought, because I didn't understand how that chamber worked.
Yeah.
So they were both fighting a guy in a black suit. And I thought the protagonist was fighting his future self.
Yes.
And I thought Neil was fighting his future self.
Oh, okay.
And so when Neil, like, the helmet comes off and all you see is this hallway and Neil's at the end, and the guy, goes down the other hallway out of shot, and you just see Neil see him and then go away. I thought he saw himself, and he realized what was going on. So that's that's a hint that Neil's in on more than he knows. So I figured that, but I thought it was himself because I didn't understand how they worked.
And this is what I thought in that same scene was, I just thought it was this guy, whoever he was, relied heavily on that mask, and as soon as he yanked that mask off,
He was dead.
And he was just like, oh, that was easy. And I was like, why doesn't that guy know, or why doesn't the protagonist know? That's all he needs to do, just take his mask off and he's fine. And then you find out later, it's like, oh, that's him. But he already knew that he was going to be inverted.
Yeah.
But he couldn't tell the protagonist in regular time
Right.
and ruin it.
Right.
So he just like gave it to him and go on, do
Yeah.
your thing. So
Which, to your credit, that's a thing. If they were inverted, the mask coming off,
Oh, yeah,
if
that's
it was
true.
auctioned.
Yeah, that is
But
true.
he had gone through the chamber, so he was no longer inverted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The inverted one was on the protagonist's side, not on Neil's side. But it's a good thought. It makes you go, huh,
Yeah.
huh.
It was so good. Like the amount. I feel like there are some things that I would have loved to have had explained better or fleshed out more, but like the logistics of this movie just blew my mind away, and I was just like, hands down, like it's just the most impressive film I've ever seen as far as logistics of the details and everything going in reverse. And there's like a scene where they're in the, like, she gets shot and they have to, and also these objects have like nuclear exposure, like they could have, what is it? Radiation poisoning.
Radiation poisoning.
And so not only does she have a bullet, but it's inverted and it could cause radiation poisoning. And so they have to reverse her in order to save her. but you have, like, they're driving off. They've gone in reverse. They're driving off, and they see themselves arriving at the airport, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
You have the crazy car scene where they're trying to exchange this algorithm, and the bad guy is after them, and we see, like, this car has been wrecked and destroyed, and all of a sudden it, like, flips back into, like, normal, and it's driving, and then later we find out it was him.
Yeah,
I know.
And, like, even, like, when they were, like, walking into the building that had the machine, and you see him on the other side of the barrier, with his mask sitting in the car. I didn't realize that was him. I was just like, there's some creepy dude in a mask watching them.
Yeah, me too.
And then, like, but then when he came back out and he got in the car, I was like, that was him. He was watching himself.
Yeah.
Well, really, that point changes it, because even right before then we have the car scene, and I was still so confused with the cars driving backwards. I was like, but how? Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get it still.
Right,
like,
yeah.
the concept has come in a little clearer, but still,
Our minds are linear for a reason.
They are. This should not be a thing, because we can't handle it. Our brains would explode. So.
Oh, man.
I'd like to try.
Yeah.
Try.
And we talked about this off camera before, but we'll bring it up, how we're all Doctor Who fans, and it was a lot of what season was it? 11? I mean, not 11.
Was it
11th
11th Doctors? I think it would be season
7 was the middle one of Matt Smith, right?
Mm-mm.
No? With the whole...
I think it's season 5.
We're talking
6.
about the spaceman.
5 and 6.
The spacesuit.
I think that's
season,
6.
right? Is that 6?
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4.
The 9th?
5, 6. Yes,
I
you
think
were
it's
right. It is
6.
6. Yeah. But just how, if you watch Doctor Who, they, and you have to watch a lot of it.
This
to
is
get
another
this.
spoiler
But
zone.
Yeah,
This is where Spoiler Zone's from, too.
Yes.
Yes, that's
Spoilers,
so true.
sweetie.
Oh, you're so
Spoilers.
right.
It's from Doctor Who. There you go.
Oh man, but they drop tiny little hints through the entire season, and they all come full circle and have to do with time, and that without giving it away too much. If you liked Tenet, definitely check out Doctor Who.
I think we should go ahead and just give this away, because I want to talk about this.
Let's go for it.
Well, so again, secondary spoiler zone for Doctor Who. But some of the parallels here, we've got...
I feel like this movie was ripped off from Doctor Who.
Well, as soon as the ending happened, I have this very, Doctor Who feel, and we find out at the end, Neil, the protagonist, is saying goodbye to Neil, and he knows Neil's got to go in one more time to open the door,
Right.
or close
die.
the door,
Yeah.
close the door and die.
Mm-hmm.
He knows he's got to do it. He saw the backpack. He knows what's on it. He knows Neil's about to go and die, and Neil knows it too.
Yes.
He says, "By the look of your face, this is like going to be, one last mission or something like that." But there's this like revolution kind of realization moment for the protagonist where he realizes, and Neil says, "I've known you for forever." So they're meeting in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
it's one of these situations like, they're seeing each other at different points in their friendship. And so, that's when we find out the protagonist, he puts it together. Like, he is the starter of Tenet. Like, all that stems from that moment with Neil.
Mm-hmm.
So going to Doctor Who, we've got the 11th Doctor and River Song, a great character who we've seen a little bit. And what happens, we find out that they are meeting each other in reverse. And so,
And his first time meeting her is her last time meeting him.
which actually happens with the 10th Doctor.
Yes.
Silence.
I was trying to.
That's
My
very
brain
true.
just kind of. Okay, yeah.
And she doesn't recognize
You're
him.
right.
Yes.
But that was her last time, and that's how we see her end there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we meet her character, we see her final stand in the library in Doctor Who, and
Yeah.
then they meet in reverse. So the more he gets
crazy.
to know her, the less she knows him.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a similar thing
who
here.
sits down and just thinks about the writing?
It's crazy.
So good.
It's so good. And I just so Doctor Who was really emotional for me. That whole journey of Doctor Who and River Song is just near and dear to my heart. And so we're watching this movie, and we get to that point, and actually they reveal what's going to happen a few minutes before, because we see they're going into the chamber to get the algorithm, which has 9 pieces. It's all been assembled. They're very close to the world coming to total destruction. And we see a body on the ground, and they zoom in on the backpack. And then later, a few minutes down the road, we see Neil put on the backpack with it. So we know that he's going to die. And it's just like they reveal that. And I was like, oh, I'm having so much emotions about this.
When they zoomed into the backpack the first time, I was like, is that supposed to mean something to me? Like, did I miss something?
I didn't know it was going to be Neil, but I knew. Well, and I will say, Ashley the whole time was saying, I think Neil's going to die. I think Neil's going to die. Like, for the second half of the movie.
Man.
Just randomly. And so.
She knew because Ashley's inverted.
Ashley's inverted. It's true.
So,
I've known for a while.
And then to take the backpack one more level, I read, because again, we've only seen this once. I haven't had a chance to watch it a second time. But when they're in the opera house at the beginning, there's a guy with a mask who saves the protagonist's life, and it has the red string. So it's Neil.
So I was actually going to ask that question because I didn't see
it. Or is it the protagonist and it's actually his backpack that he gives to Neil later on? It could be one of these two things.
I don't know.
It could be.
I guess it doesn't have to be linear. When we started going, not back in time, but for lack of a better word, back in time, and we relived all those scenes that we had seen, I thought the ending, because I wasn't clear on the opera house at the beginning, and I was thinking that the opera house might be where the final battle happens, and we were going to literally bookmark this movie from beginning to end. That did not happen. I'm fine with that. I need to go back and watch it to really understand the significance of the opera house. But I think the biggest piece was just the bullet. It sets up, number one, that the protagonist is the protagonist, and that he is like our main character who's willing to die for, And then it sets up the bullet, and we see that little Easter egg. So I was going to ask, is the guy at the beginning of the opera house with the mask who saves him, was it the protagonist or was it Neil? What do you think?
I would like to, initially when we're watching this movie and you see the bullet go in reverse, and obviously you can't see the guy in the opera house's face. And I knew that was intentional. And I was like, I bet that's him.
When he said something like, who's this guy? Or who was that guy? I mean, they kind of give you that right at the beginning.
So I think once you watched it a second time, you could hear from the voice, like which one it is.
You have to watch it. But
when I was initially watching, I was like, oh, I bet that's him. And so when we hit that moment of reverse of time, I really thought we were going to go all the way back.
I did too.
But we didn't. And I love that. Like, I actually really appreciated it because it gives you, like, the open possibilities of all the things that weren't quite revealed, but you can unravel them later. Like, for example, the SWAT team that's going into the opera house, they wait for the other team to arrive to switch out the patches. And
they had to see who it was. Yeah.
And it was just like, we hit this again later in the red team versus blue team. And I have to say, this is a little side note. I have only played Halo like twice in my life. Twice, decades ago. And I really got the Halo vibes from the end of this movie because we had the red team.
Red versus blue.
Blue team.
Yeah.
That's about all I know about Halo.
Hey, I'll tell you, the one time Van Beth played Halo, one or two times, however many. I played a lot, but so many hours. Anyway, lots of years of my life. But Beth had played one time, and she just hit all the buttons, and she's killing people left and right, and she doesn't even know how. It was
spectacular.
It was great.
Apparently, I got a double kill, and I was like, what does that mean?
My voice was like, double kill. She's like, okay. And you ran over people, and it was great. But yeah, red versus blue.
I got the Halo vibes.
Now, that whole battle scene, coolest part. The building with the two rockets being launched at the same building, both inverted and regular, and hit at the same time. And
you see both sides.
You see both sides of the building. One side's already destroyed, then you see it get undestroyed and fixed, and then destroyed again. And it's like, my mind cannot comprehend this.
Well, and the rockets hit from different, like one hits up high, one hits low.
One hits up high, one's up.
You're like, oh gosh.
And in the theater, it was so loud and awesome. Like, you feel like you're there. You're just like, oh.
Well, and that's why,
I can't imagine
this
IMAX.
movie, the production of this movie was spectacular. Like the handling of all these things, and like the plane crashing, how they actually this had nothing to do with inversion. Like no part of the plane is inverted.
You didn't use a green screens at all in this movie.
So to see this huge plane actually crash into a part of an airport, like to actually pull that off, it's just
knowing that actually happened. It's just like, oh man.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because you had seen some behind the scenes stuff before the movie, and you told me that the plane crash was real, and it was $1 million shot.
Oh my gosh.
So when we get to the point where there's a plane moving, I'm like,
this is it.
This is real. This isn't green screen.
Yeah,
this
it's like just to take it in and be
CGI.
like, if I were there watching this, or even if I had a friend there who showed me a video on their phone of it happening, it really happened, guys.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Super cool.
So cool. That and also the music in this movie, which Hans Zimmer did not produce. He's produced almost all of Christopher Nolan's movie scores, but he was busy producing Dune, is what I heard, and so he was unable to, with his schedule, do Tenet. But the guy's name I don't remember, who did do the music, did a fantastic job still. And one thing that we noticed was the first scene that was inverted was the car scene on the highway, and the music was backwards that was played forward the first time, and it's just like subtle little
That's
things
crazy.
like that. It's just, oh,
Stuff
man.
like that.
Yeah.
I looked up the budget. I don't know if you had looked it up for the movie.
Was it
Estimated
like 200 mil or
205 million.
205? Okay.
Hasn't cleared that yet.
No, that's
It's not
man.
doing great.
I hope it. I mean, I know it will.
Well, and it's just the struggle
just-
of the theaters. Some
Yes.
places not being open, some being
Yeah.
open.
I
people being
respect
weird.
and I appreciate that he
Took
was
the
one of the
bullet.
first ones to take the bullet and
Yes.
be like,
Yeah.
let's get it out there. 'Cause somebody
Took
has to
the
get
bullet.
the ball rolling. Somebody's
Yes.
got to get good movies in theaters to get
Yeah.
people back in there. They're not going to go and watch all these indie films or films that people. I don't know.
These $5 things. So.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not going to
We're
get
talking
people.
about my
back.
movies.
So sorry, Beth. What are your top
fight,
five?
fight.
Oh,
The working
man.
title for this film was Merry-Go-Round. Aren't we glad they ditched that?
Yes.
Gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Woof.
What was the name of the a word that's spelled frontwards and backwards?
A palindrome.
A palindrome. That's what this is, and it makes sense
Tenet.
when you understand the concept of the movie. And it's like,
Yes.
yeah. Oh yeah. When we first saw that guy do that on the boat at the beginning of the movie, he's trying to explain Tenet to the protagonist, and he goes like this, and we just made fun of him and thought it was so dumb. And then afterwards, they do it again and explain that's how like time is.
That's how like time works together.
Yeah,
but
and then it's like, oh, that's why he
pulling.
did that.
Well, that's the whole time I was like, what does this have to? Is this just a fun little symbol? And when he did it on the boat, I was like, this is so dumb. All he has is a word and this symbol. I was like, and this fool's gonna go out and risk his life for that. I'm like, there's no
Okay,
way.
I
But then when
don't-
the Indian woman did it, what was her name? Priya, when she
Priya.
did it for the first time, I was like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah,
like
like, this
we're
is a
bringing it
thing
in.
now.
So, sorry to interrupt. It was just cool.
I was just gonna say, like, if someone came and was like, "The world is gonna end. You're the only one who can save it." All I got for you is Tenet and this.
And
You'll
this.
understand later. Like,
You know what I would have said? Bye bye world. I can't do anything with that.
like, how are you supposed to go off of that? Like, that's insane.
But how quickly the protagonist, like, how quickly he accepted it, even before he fully understood it. Like
He's like, yeah.
he's like learning as he went and just accepted it.
I'd be like, I need some science lessons first. Let's talk about this.
Right. He just kind of rolled with it, but and it's funny because he's the one who freaking started the whole thing.
Mhm.
But you find out later, it's just. Yeah.
So a scene I had forgotten about, but I think is really cool. They were trying to find out like who is selling and moving around these weapons that are coming back from the future.
Mhm.
And so they end up in India. They think it's Priya's husband. It's not. It's Priya. But his house is so like such a fortress that they can't get in. They're like, you could probably get in for maybe a couple minutes, but then you would never leave. And they literally launched themselves at this
They
building.
like catapulted themselves.
That was cool.
It was crazy. And then they like catapulted themselves back down. It was so wild.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a thing.
I didn't either. I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to go splat against this building.
Yeah.
But they survived.
Guys, we live in a Twilight world. Do you remember the other part? Something about dusk. I don't know.
I was like,
that
it's
was
something
the-
about dusk. Yeah.
Oh, was that the code word?
Yeah,
or
that was the
whatever?
code word.
I was like, what are you
Everything
talking
ends
about?
at dusk. or something like-
about friends at dusk. I don't know. Hold on.
Like everything ends at dusk. I don't know. It's something about dusk.
I don't remember.
I'll let you find it.
Oh, And there are no friends at dusk. That's what
There
it was.
are no friends at dusk.
I just want a T-shirt that says "We live in a twilight world," and like, if you know, you know. It's one of those
If
things.
you know, you
Or a
know.
coffee mug, at least.
You know, the interesting thing is, you could put Robert Pattinson's face on it, and it could go for either Twilight or Tenet.
Oh my
Beth,
God.
speaking of Robert Pattinson, you made a good point when
Yes.
we walked out of the movie. You said this proves that he is past the Twilight.
I said this proves he can handle Batman.
He can handle Batman. Yeah, that he can take
Yeah.
on a role like without the Twilight. I don't know.
Yeah.
People talked about it. It was possibly going to ruin his career or whatever, or they'll only ever see him as Edward Cullen. But this proves that
Well,
he can
and
do
like
it.
when they named him as Batman, as the next Batman, I was like, that's an interesting
Yeah,
choice.
I was skeptical.
And I could see him playing Bruce Wayne. I could see
Absolutely.
that. Like,
But-
he's got the Bruce Wayne down, but I
Yeah.
wasn't sure about Batman.
Yeah.
But after watching this movie, I think he's going to be able to pull it off.
And the trailer was amazing.
It was.
Batman.
It
Yeah.
was. He's definitely got the capability. It'll
Yeah.
still. This movie wasn't enough of a role for him to break the Twilight bonds, but he chipped away at him a little
Yes,
bit. We'll say
yes.
that. So, and I was reading an article on famous roles that made actors famous that they hate, and he does not like the
Every Disney
the
Channel
Twilight.
actor ever.
Totally. I made it out. So, but he is not a
Yeah.
fan of the Twilight role, just because it very much put him in a box. And so I think I was encouraged by his performance here that he kind of break out. You know,
Yeah.
Something though that that I just kind of have thought about with looking at these characters. I think the actors all did a great job with the characters, but every character was just kind of,
Blah.
blah.
Yeah, this was definitely, that was something I walked away from this movie. I was like, the plot was really cool. The concept was cool. The logistics and execution of forwards and reverse was really cool. But at the end of the day, I didn't really care about any of these characters.
I would have, I think Robert Pattinson's character, Neil, is the one that had to die because it was the one you liked the most.
I
Yeah.
liked Neil.
I think they had to, if anybody
How
else
dare
had
they.
died, they'd have been like, like the audience is like, it's all right. Like, I can live with
Yeah.
that. And I mean, we saw Andre die,
Yeah.
and you're rooting for that one, the villain. Which, can we just address, Kenneth Branagh is such a versatile
Oh,
actor.
man.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
He
I have
nailed
never
that
seen him in a
role.
role like this.
He nailed that role.
Nailed the role. So again, really, really good actor, really good job acting, and that character was the villain, but you saw him at his scariest when he was dealing with his wife.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Not the supervillain
Not the
arms
best
dealer of
marriage.
the world either. Yeah, not the best marriage, right? We've got the protagonist is literally the character's name, which I didn't realize till we walk out. That's so cool.
Because the whole time I'm like, they haven't said his name. We've heard everybody else's name, but like, what is this guy's name?
doesn't
Did
have
I
a
miss
name.
it in this fast dialogue that you blasted, background music in, and I missed all of it?
So he's played by John David Washington, who I had never seen in anything before. He's got 10 credits to his name before this. So kind of unknown,
Yeah.
and at least to me. But I thought he did, again, a spectacular
Oh, yeah.
job.
Yes.
But even with the protagonist, and I think it's because we're seeing the protagonist at the beginning of all this, I think the part that gives me some, oh, that's a really cool role, is what you see like he does with think about the protagonist moving forward. He is putting into place pieces of this plan that he knows how it's going to turn out.
Right.
That's really cool, It's also like job security, like you're
Yeah.
good, like we're gonna succeed, guys,
Right,
But
yeah.
kind of the future of that, and he does some cool stuff here, but there's not a lot of character development for him.
I think that goes for a lot of Christopher Nolan's movies. He nails concepts that people have never thought of. He pushes the boundaries of movies. It's like, I'm gonna make this happen. But the character development is a little weaker, aside from the Batman trilogy, because but those characters were already developed. He just kind of worked with them.
Well, and I think that trilogy is built on Batman's character development as well.
Yeah.
True.
We see the rise
true.
and fall.
Yeah. And
It
you have
wouldn't have
3
been-
movies to see
and you've got
his
3.
character as opposed to just one.
Yeah.
Truth.
But yeah.
Well, I think for me, my favorite character is Michael Caine. He was in there for 2 seconds, but he was the most exciting character, I think. Michael Caine. His character name is Michael Crosby. Did you know that? I love it was so much of a cameo. They gave him his real first name.
Man.
And just like his little banter with the protagonist their chemistry on screen, literally less than 5 minutes, was so good though. And I just love his little he said something about you don't have a monopoly on like was it snobbishness or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we have a controlling interest or something like that. I was just like, yes, like that was really good.
I read a fact about him playing that role in that Christopher Nolan was so secretive about the screenplay that he even when Michael Caine was reading the script, he only let him read his section, and he wouldn't let him know what the movie was about. He just said, but since they had such a good relationship, he went in blindly and was like, sure, I'll do this. So
until he signed on.
No, he still didn't know until the movie was released what the movie was.
Kidding.
He literally went in and said all those lines and had no idea what the movie was about until it came out.
Well, I feel like Michael Caine trusts Christopher Nolan a whole lot more than Christopher Nolan trusts Michael Caine. I'm like, they're such good friends. Well, then why don't you tell me?
Yeah. Oh, man. And they said when they, what's his name? The main guy, Washington.
John David
Washington. They said he had to read the screenplay in Christopher Nolan's office, like in a locked door. Like they had to lock the door, and he went in alone, and he had to read it like for 5 hours before he could understand it, like over and over and over again, just kind of like
only 5 hours.
Well, yeah, I mean you can read a screenplay pretty fast,
yeah,
which I didn't realize how fast you could read a screenplay until like they came out like the Harry Potter
I was
prints.
going to say
and
Crimes of Grindelwald.
I like read through those like Crimes of Grindelwald or whatever, the Fantastic Beasts, like in a
Cursed
day.
Child.
And I was like, or just you could do it in almost one sitting. I'm like, oh yeah, and Cursed Child too. Like an actual play screenplay. I'm like, wow, that's actually really fast. So I understand that it could be fast.
I'm just saying it would have taken me a whole lot longer than 5 hours
5
to
days
understand.
to maybe grasp.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would have had to reread and reread.
I also just kind of appreciate, and granted, I'm just going to, pretend that I can read his mind. We don't really know the full, like we're not talking to Christopher Nolan, so we don't really know. But I feel like the fact that he doesn't give the protagonist a name and he just calls him the protagonist is literally like, you don't need to know about this guy. I want you to focus on the concepts. And it's like, he literally was just like...
It's kind of like he's going out of his way to say, hey, exactly. Who cares about the character? I mean, not who doesn't care, but
well, you know nothing about his life. Like they don't have, like growing. Like you don't know where he's from. You don't know any of those pieces. And I think maybe in that vein, I completely agree with you. And I think one of the reasons we have that opera house scene is it just sets the stage of him as a.
He cares.
Like he cares. He's completely loyal.
Oops.
He's gonna do what he's gonna do. Like he's willing to sacrifice his life for his mission.
Yes.
That's all you need to know about him. They're saying this is it.
Yeah.
Like you've seen this.
Well,
okay,
and
then
he was
you
like
can go.
worried about the people. They've got bombs. There's weird stuff happening. We've got a lot of bad guys, and he was worried about the people. And then he cares about Kat, which I feel like he cares about her a little bit too much for what has happened. But
yeah.
At the same time, like we don't know anything about him that really emotionally ties you to it. And it's like just clean, kind of like people who go into the spy industry though, like they can't really have emotional ties.
And here's the thing. I'll say this for Christopher Nolan. Who's to tell him that you have to have character development to have a good movie? It's not required. It's what we're used to. That's what most movies have is character development, but you don't have to have that to have a good movie.
Well, it's a literary plot. It's a flat character.
Yeah.
Arc is what it is.
It's a preference. I mean, it's a method of doing it, and for other people, it's preference. For me, I like to be able to grab onto the characters a little more. But
I agree with that.
But with the protagonist, I don't feel like I wasn't able to grab onto him.
Right.
I liked him.
I don't think you have to have the backstory and the emotional connection necessarily to be invested in that character. So that's not what I'm saying with that. I think some of them, it's just how they've just kind of bobbed along. There was nothing that made me, like with Kat, at the very end, there was almost nothing that made me attached to her because
she's very cold. She's an ice queen.
Yeah, but
she's also surviving.
Right. There are moments here and there, generally with all the characters. I had a little bit of and hers was when like she sets up at the beginning when she sees the woman jump off the boat. And it wasn't like, oh my goodness, my husband's cheating on me. It wasn't. Her reaction was, this woman was free, and I was so jealous of her because of that. Like, she could do whatever she wanted. And that turned out to be her. Like, at the end.
It was so great.
Right,
oh,
right.
That
so that
was a
pulled me in.
Another one of those subtle things that you just completely miss, and then it's like, oh.
Right. But generally, on the whole, I just felt like the characters were kind of were flat.
They were flat. They were flat characters.
And it worked for the point of the movie.
Yeah.
The point of the movie is not to be invested in the characters, right?
Right.
It's not the point at all.
The concept alone was enough to take.
The concept alone was enough.
Please don't pile on anymore.
I feel like those things were kind of muted so that you could focus on what was happening, because it was just so cool. The logistics of this were just so cool.
Well, and I think one of the reasons I loved Michael Caine's so tiny cameo is because when he's on the screen, he adds that little bit of like flair for me. It's just that little, but it's tiny because it wouldn't have worked with the story, and it wouldn't have. Not my preference. Yeah. But it would. But it worked out well.
And I also love because we're used to him being Alfred. Like, he's kind of like that guy you get wisdom from, and I think it's so cool because the protagonist calls himself the protagonist a couple times, and he's like, basically, this is my story. I'm in charge. And then later on, it's really cool to see the protagonist like click. I'm the boss. And he even tells Priya at the end, because Priya's there to kill Kat because Kat knows too much and she's tying up loose ends. And he comes in and shows up and he's like, Priya, we've both been working for me. I'm the boss. And then he like ties up his loose ends. And I just thought that was really cool. It was like, he is the protagonist. He is the one in charge.
Yeah.
Again, thinking about the protagonist moving forward, he has killed Priya, and then he's going to, in his future, it's everything that's already happened. So working with her on the professional level, these small little interactions were, for her, the end of their relationship. So he's going to go through meeting him, all of their building of the Tenet, network, society, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Knowing he's going to kill her.
Right.
Like, knowing he's already killed her. He, personally, has already killed her.
Yeah.
Like, that's funny.
That's
to me.
crazy.
I think it's neat. It's crazy, but...
Another thing I liked was the whole, him giving Kat the cell phone. That whole concept was cool, too. How it's like, if you're ever in trouble, call.
He said, I'm always right here. And she knew. She called, and he was right there.
Yeah.
He took care of it.
It's crazy.
He was tracking
it's like, it's probably nothing, but there's this car following.
Well, and, I think when they said goodbye, whatever goodbye was for them, there was this kind of, don't know if I'll see you, any of this stuff, and they didn't see each other. She left him a voicemail. Like she doesn't know what he did. You know what I mean?
She told him the time. Like, she kind of told him the location and time.
Right.
Trusting that he would get that and come to that point in time and save her.
Yeah. Has no idea if it was anything, if he ever did it. Just that level of trust. So it's good.
Yeah.
It just spiked at the end for me. It was a little late. I was like, oh, these are good depth moments. Like, do it earlier when she was married to the crazy guy,
Oh my goodness, yeah. And I just, like, the whole thing of reversal, I just think of, like, what a great character Neil was. Because the whole time, like, he knows what's going on. Because he would have gotten...
He was playing dumb.
Letting the protagonist figure it out.
He had to.
But he knew what was coming because the protagonist would have met him at the very beginning.
Right.
Knowing all the information. And would have told him enough.
That's crazy.
It's so cool.
I cannot wait to see it again. Like, cannot wait.
It's going to be good. One of my favorite quotes, I'm trying to find it exactly, but I cannot find it. But it's mentioned in, like, The Crown and a lot of other places, and it's more, for that kind of royal position they can't take sides, they must be indifferent,
Yes.
And that keeping quiet is sometimes the hardest job. It's the hardest things to do. It takes the most strength and courage in that context, And so I think for Neil, that was what he had to do. It was a hard thing to do, but he, for the good of the mission, for the good of his friend, they were friends. He had to stay quiet on some things. He knew what he had to say and what he couldn't say.
I think he was easily mine and probably everybody's favorite character.
Yeah.
Gosh,
I wonder
think you know
how
what he went
much.
through.
Yeah,
Like,
I wonder how much the protagonist told him, like early on in his life
Yeah.
or later on.
Huh.
You know, like Neil seemed to know that he was going to his death.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think he said you're going to die here, but he might have. He's like you're not. He might have said you're not going to make it out of the battlefield.
Well,
I
Neil
don't know.
walks up on his own body in the reverse, so he knew. I don't know how like far in advance he knew he was going to die, but he did in the battle like walk up on his own body.
He had to recognize his backpack.
Yeah,
he knew
yeah.
it was him.
He knew it was him. So
Yeah.
he knew exactly what he was going to go do, but he felt like it was fate, and he was ready to accept his fate.
The ending was really good for me. High point.
Yes.
I kind of had the
Because
different
sometimes you can
places,
have like a
but-
high concept movie like this, and it's so much build up and so much thinking that they don't know how to end it. But I felt like they ended it really well, and he didn't tie up all the strings because we don't see Neil and the protagonist meeting. We don't know who these future people really are, or exactly, like we know how they contacted Stark, but we don't know, like Andre Satara, but we don't know all the details. We don't know the plan. We don't know what the future's like and how bad it is. So like, there's a lot of things that we could explore that would be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think the whole point is that for us, the audience,
Yeah.
this is the end and it's the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we are seeing the end and the beginning at the same time.
That's true.
So we saw the protagonist begin, but we saw his mission completed at the end.
Yes.
So there's not loose ends tying up. The whole thing's tied up, and it's just beginning at the same time. All the stuff in the middle, we don't know, and we'll never know.
Yeah.
But-
and I'm excited. Like as I watch it a second time,
To pick up on
I'm
stuff.
gonna to pick up on stuff and to like zone in on Neil, knowing he knows everything.
See what he does.
Like and
Yeah.
see like the things that he does.
Yeah.
So when we walked out of the theater, y'all walked to your car, and then me and Beth were walking back to ours. We were just talking about how awesome it was, and then we were comparing it to Inception, and we were like, yeah, just like you know how in Inception at the very end of the credits there's like the ending, and then we both froze in our tracks. We stopped and
Uh-oh.
we're like, oh my gosh, we did not.
How did we not think about
We did not
that?
stop for the. What was
We
wrong with us?
literally
And
had a
so
freak out
we,
at, like,
for like 2
10
or 3
p.m. in the
minutes. We
theater.
checked three different
The parking lot.
sources. 3 different sources online to find out that there was no scene at the end.
Oh, thank
I know,
goodness.
but we both freaked out. And we're like, oh my gosh.
We're like, what did we do? How could we have left?
Oh my goodness.
We have.
And Beth, of all people, you're the one who always
I know.
is like,
Insists that we
are
stay.
staying.
This is what
I don't care
happens.
how tired you are and hungry. We're
That's
going to
true.
wait.
We were out of routine. That's what happens when
That's
you go
what
to
it
the
is.
theaters
5
since
months.
Freaking
March.
COVID.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Crazy.
5, 6,
Crazy.
6 months ish. Yeah, it's crazy. That's what happens. But yeah, I'm very adamant about never leaving
Yeah.
the theater too early because Inception had that great moment where you end the movie and you're like, is it a dream? Is it not? And then you get to the end of the credits and it answers it for you. The Gray with Liam Neeson, he's fighting off the wolves, and you're like, did he survive? Did he not? We don't know. You get to the end and there's that little hint.
I haven't seen that. Please don't say anymore.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Okay.
The whole movie is him fighting wolves. Like, that's literally in the trailer. That
Well,
was
and-
not a spoiler.
I bet he wears gray too.
No, he doesn't.
There's a gray wolf. I fixed it.
Okay.
Anyway, I think also with Marvel, I mean, they're the
Oh,
kings
Marvel.
Well, those you
of
know
those.
going into those.
But you have to watch that for it doesn't necessarily speak to what you just watched.
Watch.
It gives you information you need to know for the next.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
It
true.
sets the stage.
Yeah.
So you can't take these things too lightly, and we did. We have failed you, but it was okay. So there was nothing.
ourselves.
And ourselves.
Yes.
I did like, you know, how they did Endgame. There was nothing else to show, but then they had like the little ding,
Ding, ding, ding.
and then we counted how many, and we were like,
So
"What does it mean? How many things was it?" What?
OG Avengers.
Yep.
Yeah,
So good. And it was,
It was an emotional
Tony Stark
moment.
making his suit.
his armor in the cave. Yeah,
Yeah.
so cool. All right,
Love
I think
it.
we need to wrap up here.
All right.
Was there anything else that you just had to get out before we end the show here? Before we get our review?
You know, I feel like we've talked about a lot of things. We could keep talking about this movie
This
for a
could
while.
be like a 3 or 4 part episode.
I think the more I dive into this movie, the more I'm not going to understand it. So I'm trying to keep it pretty surface
Yeah.
level in my mind.
There's already
Like,
stuff that, like, as we're talking, I'm like, I
I
didn't
don't
think about
know.
that.
I
Oh,
don't
gotta
know.
watch it again. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Ratings?
Ratings. So I give it a 9.
Ooh.
Loved it. I went in and was highly entertained, had my mind blown. Only thing I would say is negative about it was that it was too hard. It was a little too complex to understand in one go. You know, it's like it requires you to watch it several times,
Right.
which is okay. Like, but it just the first time watching, it's a little less enjoyable because you're confused. There's a lot of times where I'm like, did I miss it? I'm like questioning my own mind, like, oh man, did I just miss something? But so that was the only negative thing I had to say about it.
Jennifer?
She hasn't seen it.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
she went in there.
That's
so.
right. Jennifer hasn't seen it. Jennifer, don't listen to this podcast.
It's a little late now. If you heard us say that, sorry, Jennifer.
Hey, we gave the spoiler zone alert.
We did twice.
So.
Twice. All right,
Okay.
Beth.
My issue with this movie.
Here we go.
Ashley's in the back laughing. I heard that.
Is that there was a lot of dialogue you couldn't hear. It was spoken very fast, which is fine, but they were blasting background music.
Now, do you think that was the theater's
No,
audio, or do you
I've
think
seen
it was...
this written in numerous
Okay.
locations. People have it's an issue. It just wasn't an us issue. It was an everybody issue. So I
Rise up, folks.
That's
Rise
right.
up.
Come on, make your sound better. We want to understand this dialogue that you worked really hard to memorize, to write, to say. I want to hear it, and I don't want to have to watch subtitles. It's so annoying.
What's your number, Beth?
So
She has other reasons.
Yeah.
I
can
do.
tell.
I do
Get
have
to
other
'em.
reasons, but I will just. I have other reasons. I'll say them for
Bonus
later.
episode. Best reasons.
Candy
for-
bag.
Yeah.
I gave it a 7.5.
Okay.
I'm getting everything calculated. Ashley gave this movie an 8.8.
Ooh,
Well, it has to be.
8.8.
I thought we had to do within halves.
Wow, Ashley.
Ashley, 8 point. She says 9. Okay.
9. Well, I've messed everything up. Hold on. John, you were a 9.
I was a 9 as well.
Beth, you were an 8.
7.5.
7.5.
How dare
Sorry.
you?
Sorry. Gosh. And I was
man.
an 8 for this movie
8,
as
okay.
well.
No.
For the reasons I've stated, for just the way they handled the characters. It's not lack of character development. It's just they felt blah. Like
Mhm.
I walked away not liking a lot of them, and I don't think I was supposed to do that. I'm not supposed to love all of them.
Yeah.
But just not, and it's not even
I
a
wanted
like.
to care.
I wanted to care. I wasn't as
Yeah.
invested with a few of them that I felt like I should have been. They should have done a couple things more with some people. I think the protagonist was done perfectly.
Yes.
But a couple other ones. And just the complexity of the film, it's great someone can think that up, but there also has to be a level of like just general understanding. And I think they did pretty good, but it was still just a little too up here for some folks on the mainstream. So anyway, my little
So what's
opinion
our?
gives us a crew review of 33.5 for this movie.
What?
Never mind. I forgot to divide.
We're off the charts.
Oops. That's the inverted rating. Gives us a crew review of 8.4.
8.4.
8.4.
I love it. That was so
Oops.
funny. Kidley.
I did not even realize
so hard
it.
at you.
No,
It
it's
just cracked
fine.
me up.
I was
It caught
like,
me off guard.
I didn't realize what happened from it. You were laughing. I was like, I forgot to divide. Somebody else can have this job next time.
You're doing great. You're doing great. It's all this inversion.
Oh man.
Inversion.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to us. Even if you're watching this on Facebook, please subscribe to us on iTunes Podcasts or Google Podcasts. It really helps us out. Leave a review. Share it with a friend. Put it on your timeline.
And all that
All
jazz.
the things. All the things. There's one more thing I wanted to say. Crap. I don't know.
2 weeks. Every 2 weeks.
That's exactly.
I knew it was.
We didn't
My
even talk about this, but
reader.
that's what I was going to say.
I'm actually inverted right now.
We're back.
I knew you were
Oh my
going to do that.
goodness.
Amazing.
When do I die? Don't tell me. Okay. So yeah, the show is back on every other week, which is how we intended it, just because it's a lot to take a night to go to the theaters and then take a night to do a podcast. So anyway, every other week. We don't know what we're watching yet for the next one. So
Follow us so
follow
you can
us
see.
social media
Yeah.
on all the things at The Crew Review Podcast. Catch you later. That's not the last thing we say. Beth, hit it.
Until next time, we go big tonight.